My husband earned $85,000 a year and bought his 23-year-old sister a house worth $170,000 in cash, without telling me. My 58-year-old mother said, "Calm as still water, if you can't go on, then end it." After it ended, I marveled, my mother knew best. The bank notification arrived at 9 in the evening. I had just stepped out of the shower, the damp heat still clinging to my skin, a towel wrapped around my hair. The bathroom mirror was fogged over, and I remember catching a glimpse of myself, blurred, indistinct, before my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up absently, expecting another work email, another late-night request I would dutifully answer. Asterisk your account ending in 8823 has been debited $168,000. Available balance, $4,480, asterisk. The sheet mask slipped from my fingers and landed with a wet slap on the hardwood floor. I stared at the screen, the numbers blurring and then sharpening, my mind scrambling to reject what it was seeing. My private account. The one that held every dollar I had scraped together over 10 years of marriage, 10 years of working full-time and running a household, of skipping vacations and new clothes so I could tuck something away for a future I believed would be ours. Ethan knew the password, he'd asked for it years ago, saying it was smart to share, just in case, but he had never touched it. Until tonight. I rushed out of the bedroom, my bare feet cold against the floor, the phone clutched so hard my knuckles whitened. The living room was dim, lit only by the flicker of the television and the glow of Ethan's phone screen. He was sprawled on the sofa, thumb idly scrolling, a half-empty beer on the coffee table. He didn't look up. "Where is it?" I thrust the screen in front of his face, my hand trembling. "The money. Where did the money go?" Ethan looked up, his expression infuriatingly calm. He set his phone down, folded his hands over his stomach, and sighed the sigh of a man being asked to endure a minor inconvenience. "Oh, that. I used it for Chloe's house." Chloe. His 23-year-old sister. The same sister who still lived at home, who posted vacation photos on social media while complaining she couldn't find a job that paid enough. The sister who had never once offered to help with a family dinner or a holiday gathering. A rushing sound filled my ears, like water pouring into a sealed room. "You did what?" "Chloe's getting married," he said, as if explaining gravity to a child. "The guy's family insists they have a place of their own. It's non-negotiable. I'm her big brother. If I don't help her, who will? That was my money." My voice came out in a trembling whisper, the shock giving way to a wave of disbelief so strong I felt dizzy. "You took my money without asking me." "Your money." Ethan frowned, sitting up now, his posture shifting from relaxed to defensive. "Olivia, come on. We're married. There's no your money and my money. That's not how marriage works." The gall of it was so staggering I almost laughed, a hysterical giggle rising in my throat that I forced back down. "We're married, so you transfer $168,000 without a single word. You don't think that deserves a conversation? A phone call? A text even? What's there to talk about?" He stood, now taller than me, using his height the way he always did in arguments, a silent intimidation. "You would have said no. You always say no when it involves my family. I was saving us the fight. Ethan, you. Anyway, it's done." He waved a dismissive hand, already turning back toward the sofa. "The contract's signed, the deeds recorded. Making a scene won't change anything. And honestly, she's my sister. She'll remember this, and one day she'll repay the favor." $170,000, I said, my voice suddenly flat. "How much was the house?" 170,000, all in. He said it the way someone might announce the price of a dinner entree. Nice little 2-bedroom over on Maplewood. Perfect for newlyweds. And the entire amount came from my account. Yeah. You had exactly enough, so I didn't need to touch any other funds. A tremor ran through me from head to toe, as if my body understood the betrayal before my mind could fully catalog it. You make 85,000 a year. Why didn't you use your own money? My money's tied up, he said, as if this were the most obvious thing in the world. I've got capital calls coming for the new venture. Need to keep liquidity. You wouldn't understand, it's a business thing. So you liquidated my savings instead. God, why are you so petty? He shook his head, a martyr to my unreasonable behavior. We've been married 10 years. 10 years. And you're still keeping score. Chloe calls you her sister-in-law, and you can't help her out one time. I looked at him, really looked, and I felt something splinter inside me, a clean, cold crack like ice breaking on a frozen lake. This man I had cooked for, cleaned for, supported through late nights and career crises, suddenly seemed like a stranger wearing my husband's face. 10 years ago, when we married, he would have noticed the hurt in my eyes. He would have reached for my hand, asked what was wrong, tried to fix it. Now, he couldn't even see me. Ethan, I said, each word deliberate, of that 168,000, 112 was my premarital savings. The rest I saved from my salary over the last decade. Not 1 cent came from you. Not one. He blinked, a flicker of something, surprise. Discomfort, crossing his face before the confidence returned, reinforced by years of getting his way. Premarital, postmarital, what's the difference? You're my wife. Your money is the family's money. That's what we agreed when we got married. And yours? I shot back, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. You've earned around 850,000 over these 10 years. I notice you've never called that the family's money. I've never even seen a statement. I support this family. His voice rose, filling the room, bouncing off the walls of the house I had paid to renovate. Mortgage, car payments, groceries, utilities. You think any of that pays for itself? You think the life we have just appears out of thin air? The mortgage. Now I did laugh, a hollow, bitter sound that seemed to come from somewhere outside myself. The down payment on this house was $42,000. My money. The renovation was $70,000. Also my money. Have you forgotten that? Do you need me to pull up the receipts? He faltered, his jaw working, the first crack in his armor. So what? I've been paying the mortgage every month. For 10 years. That's my contribution. That's how partnerships work, we both put in. You pay the mortgage, so it's fine to drain every cent of my savings for your sister. That's the partnership you're describing. Olivia, be reasonable. He turned away, as if the conversation was already over, as if my anger was an embarrassing display he could wait out. Chloe is my sister. Helping her is the right thing to do. If you were really that opposed, you should have said so when I asked for the password. My fingers went numb. He had asked for the password years ago, claiming it was, just in case of emergency. A medical crisis. A natural disaster. Never, never, had I imagined he would use it to empty the account behind my back, to fund a gift for his sister as if he were a generous king bestowing a favor from the royal treasury. You need to get the money back, I said, my voice flat as a tabletop. Get it back. He whirled around, his face flushed now. The deal is closed. The title's transferred. What do you expect me to do? Walk over to the title company and demand a refund? Don't be ridiculous. It's a legally binding sale. It was a cash purchase. No bank involved. There's still time to unwind it. Same thing. Look, the house is bought. End of story. If you're really that upset, I'll increase your household allowance next month. An extra $200 a month. Okay. Problem solved. Problem solved. With an extra $200 a month, he thought he could paper over a gaping wound of $168,000. The household allowance he gave me was $1,400, and I was expected to cover every grocery bill, every utility, every birthday gift, every dry cleaning run. My own salary, $1,700 a month after taxes, I poured almost entirely into the same pot. There was never enough, but I had believed we were building something together. I had believed the tight months were temporary, that one day we would sit down and look at the numbers as partners and say, look what we've built. But we had never built anything together. He had built his own fortress, and I had been carrying the bricks. Ethan. I forced the words out. My mother is coming tomorrow. So. He was already back on the sofa, reaching for his phone, the argument dismissed. Let her come. Maybe she can talk some sense into you. Getting this worked up over nothing. Nothing. $168,000, 10 years of sacrifice, a marriage reduced to an inconvenience. I didn't answer. I walked back to the bedroom and closed the door, my hand lingering on the knob as if I could seal out everything that had just happened. As I leaned against the door, I heard him on the phone in the living room, his voice suddenly warm and cheerful, the voice he used when he wanted to be the hero. Chloe. Everything's settled. The money's transferred, the deeds recorded. You can start planning the wedding for real now. I told you Big Brother would handle it. No, Olivia's fine with it. She understands. Don't you worry about a thing. I slid down the door and sat on the floor, the tears finally spilling over. But they weren't tears of grief for the money. They were tears of clarity, the painful kind that comes when you realize that 10 years of devotion had been reduced, in his eyes and in his family's, to a convenience. I was not a partner. I was a silent investor in a company that had never intended to pay dividends. The next morning at 10, the doorbell rang. I was in the bedroom, mechanically folding clothes into a bag, my mind still floating in that strange, dissociated calm that comes after a sleepless night. I assumed it was my mother and went to open the door, already rehearsing what I would say. It was not my mother. Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood in the hallway, her floral perfume so thick it seemed to precede her into the room. Beside her, Chloe hovered with a plastic bag of tangerines, her gaze skittering away from mine like a guilty child's. She was wearing new shoes, expensive-looking flats I had seen in a boutique window last month and not allowed myself to buy. Olivia, dear. Margaret swept inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the living room as if she were a general inspecting conquered territory. I heard you had a little disagreement with Ethan last night. So silly, these things. Every marriage has its bumps. Chloe trailed after her, placing the tangerines on the kitchen counter with exaggerated care, as if a piece of fruit could mend the chasm that had opened beneath my feet. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Margaret, I said, gripping the edge of the door, Ethan isn't here. He's at work. Good. Then we can talk woman to woman. She settled onto the sofa, patting the cushion beside her as if I were a child being summoned for a scolding. Olivia, Ethan called me last night, very upset. He said you're angry about helping Chloe with the house. Honestly, sweetheart, is this worth a fight? Is this really the hill you want your marriage to die on? $168,000, I said, remaining standing. From my personal savings. Taken without my consent. I know, and it's wonderful that you had it. She smiled, utterly serene, as if I had just complimented her garden. Think of it this way. Without Ethan's good job, you wouldn't have been able to save so much in the first place. It's really his success that made it possible. You should be proud that your savings could help the family. The casual erasure of my entire financial history, the years of working before I met him, the frugality, the side projects, left me momentarily speechless. What? I mean, he earns $85,000 a year, and you make what, $20,000? The math is obvious. He's the main provider, and you've been able to put a little aside because of him. Now that Chloe needs help, it's only fair. She's his sister. Blood is blood. Family takes care of family. Chloe spoke up, her voice tiny and rehearsed. Olivia, I really didn't want to cause trouble. But Derek's family made it clear, no house, no wedding. They're very traditional. What was I supposed to do? Postpone my whole life because I couldn't come up with a down payment? Maybe not use my money? I turned to her, feeling my heart rate climb. You've been working for 2 years. You could have saved. You could have looked at cheaper options. You could have told your fiancé that you'd work toward a house together, as a couple. I don't earn much, she whimpered, her lower lip trembling. You know what housing prices are like. There's no way I could afford it on my own. And Derek said if I really loved him, I'd find a way. If you can't afford a house, you don't buy a house. You don't reach into someone else's pocket and call it love. Olivia. Margaret's voice sharpened, the pleasant mask slipping. What a cruel thing to say. Chloe is family. You and Ethan don't even have children. What were you saving for, anyway? A rainy day. Vacations you never take. If you never have kids, Chloe will be the one looking after you when you're old. Helping her now is just common sense. It's an investment in your own future. The mention of children sliced straight through me, a blade I had felt before but never from this angle. For 10 years, I had wanted a baby. Ethan always had a reason to wait. His career wasn't stable enough. We needed more savings. The timing wasn't right. And eventually, the excuses stopped, replaced by a shrug and a vague, maybe someday. I had carried that grief silently, folding it into the corners of my heart. Now my mother-in-law was wielding that open wound as a weapon, as if my childlessness was a debt I now owed the family. Whether we have children is between me and Ethan. It has nothing to do with this house. Of course it does. Margaret leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You have no heir. Chloe is the closest thing. You should be grateful she's willing to take on that burden. Do you know how many nieces wouldn't bother? I'm not asking her to take on any burden. Then who's going to care for you? You'll be all alone in some state facility, and don't think Ethan's money will save you. This is how families work. We look after each other across generations. Now you're trying to break that chain over a few dollars. Kind. The word tasted like ash. Do you know who paid the down payment on this house? The house you're sitting in right now. Ethan, of course. No. I did. $42,000. My savings. And the renovation. $70,000. Also mine. Every piece of furniture, every light fixture, the kitchen tile you said you loved at Thanksgiving, I paid for all of it. Margaret's smile flickered, a crack in her certainty, but she recovered quickly, smoothing her skirt. Even if that's true, you live here, don't you? You enjoy the benefit of Ethan's salary. You've had a comfortable life. Throwing a little money at Chloe's future is the least you can do after everything this family has given you. A little money. I thought of every month I had poured my entire salary into the household account, leaving myself with nothing for a coffee with a friend or a new book. I thought of the vacations we didn't take so I could save, the clothes I didn't buy, the small pleasures I denied myself, all because I believed I was investing in a shared life. In their eyes, I was simply a deposit box that had finally been cracked open. Olivia. Chloe's eyes were wet now, her voice wobbling with practiced vulnerability. If you make Ethan take the house back, Derek will leave me. He said so. Is that what you want? To destroy my happiness over money? I thought you cared about me. If Derek will leave you without a house, he's not worth marrying. A man who makes his love conditional on a piece of real estate is not a partner, he's a buyer. Margaret slammed her palm on the coffee table, the sound sharp as a gunshot. How dare you? Chloe finally found a good match, a man with a steady job, a good family, and you'd sabotage it out of spite. I always knew you were selfish, but this is a new low. This is why you don't have children. God knew you weren't fit to be a mother. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. For a moment, the room tilted, and I had to brace myself against the wall. You think I'm selfish? My voice rose despite myself, raw and cracked. Ethan stole $168,000 from me. He didn't ask. He didn't warn me. He didn't even have the decency to tell me afterward. I found out from a bank alert. And you're calling me selfish? He took it because he knew you'd make a fuss over nothing. If you were a reasonable wife, a supportive wife, he wouldn't have had to go behind your back. You should be thanking him for handling it so smoothly instead of making a scene like this. I stared at her, and in that moment, with perfect, terrible clarity, I understood. To this family, I would always be the outsider. Every sacrifice I made was an expectation, not a gift. Every boundary I tried to draw was an act of rebellion. I was not a daughter-in-law. I was a resource, like a retirement account they had finally decided to cash out. I'm tired, I said, my voice dropping to something quiet and distant. Please leave. What kind of attitude is that? I'm your mother-in-law. You don't get to throw me out of my son's house. Then I'll leave. I turned toward the bedroom to grab my things. My hands were shaking, but my mind had gone very still. Olivia, if you keep this up, there won't be a marriage to save, Margaret called after me, her voice rising with triumph. Ethan will divorce you, and you'll walk away with nothing. Is that what you want? To be a 38-year-old divorcee with no children and no future? Then let it end. The voice came from the doorway. Quiet. Unshaken. Final. My mother, Helen, stood there, a small suitcase in her hand. She was 58, her silver hair pulled back in a low bun, her posture straight as a reed. She wore a simple cardigan and sensible shoes, but there was something in her bearing, a quiet, immovable authority, that made the room go still. She had heard everything. I could see it in the knowing, steady look she gave Margaret, the way her eyes flicked to Chloe and dismissed her in a single glance. She set down the suitcase, stepped inside, and closed the door behind her with a soft, deliberate click. And who are you? Margaret demanded, though her voice had lost some of its steam. I'm Olivia's mother. Helen walked past her without hurry and sat down beside me, her hand covering mine. The warmth of her touch nearly undid me. I felt the tears I'd been holding back press against my eyes, but I blinked them away. Well, Margaret huffed, recovering her bravado, maybe you can talk some sense into your daughter. She's throwing away a perfectly good marriage over a little family generosity. Generosity, Helen repeated, as if tasting the word. Using my daughter's entire savings without her consent is generosity. They're married. What's his is hers, and what's hers is his. That's the law. Then why didn't he use his own money for his sister's house? Helen's voice was still quiet, still calm, but each word landed like a stone dropped into still water. His money is for other things. Investments. The future. Ah. Helen nodded slowly. So his money is for other things, and her money is for his sister. An interesting arrangement. Tell me, Margaret, did you come up with that logic yourself, or did your son inherit it? Margaret's face flushed a deep, mottled red. You have no right to speak to me that way. I'm a respected member of this community. I have every right to speak however I choose when someone is trying to gaslight my daughter in her own home. Helen's voice didn't rise, but it filled every corner of the room. Now, let's be clear about what actually happened. Your son took $168,000 from Olivia's personal account without her knowledge or permission. That is not generosity. That is theft. The fact that they share a last name doesn't make it less so. In most states, that's a felony. How dare you? I'm not finished. Olivia put down $42,000 for this house and $70,000 for the renovation. For 10 years, she has handed over almost her entire paycheck to keep this household running. She cooks, she cleans, she manages your son's social obligations, she cared for you when you had your hip surgery. I remember, because she used her vacation days to do it. And in return, she gets called selfish for objecting to being robbed. Is that about right? Margaret's mouth opened and closed, a fish gasping on dry land. Chloe stared at the floor, her tangerines forgotten, her new shoes suddenly looking like evidence. We never asked her to do all that, Margaret managed, her voice smaller now. No. She did it because she believed this was a family. Because she believed that love meant sacrifice, and that her sacrifices would be honored. But a family doesn't treat one member like a wallet and another like a king. A family doesn't call a woman ungrateful for wanting to be consulted before her life savings are handed away. Chloe's voice was small and trembling. But she lives here too, my brother provides. Your brother provides a mortgage payment, Helen said, turning her gaze to the girl. Olivia provided the house itself and every stick of furniture in it. She also provides her entire salary every month. Who, exactly, is providing for whom? If your brother is such a provider, why did he need your sister-in-law's savings to buy you a house? Silence pooled in the room, thick and heavy. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantel, the distant hum of a lawnmower outside, the ragged sound of Margaret's breathing. Margaret stood abruptly, her composure shattered like dropped china. When Ethan gets home, you'll regret this. Both of you. He'll set things right. No, Helen said. I don't think I will. And I don't think Olivia will either. She's spent 10 years pouring herself into a family that sees her as a convenience. If that's all this marriage is, then it's already over. The paperwork is just a formality. You're telling her to divorce him. Margaret's voice hit a shrill note that made Chloe flinch. You're destroying their marriage. You're breaking up a home. I'm telling my daughter she deserves better than to be treated like a thief in her own house. The marriage was destroyed the moment your son decided her voice didn't matter. I'm just the one saying it out loud. Margaret grabbed Chloe's arm and hauled her toward the door, her grip tight enough to make the girl wince. We'll see what Ethan has to say about this. And don't expect a penny if you walk out that door, Olivia. You'll leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. Helen smiled, a thin, fierce line that didn't reach her eyes. We'll see what a judge has to say. I imagine a forensic accountant will find this very interesting. The door slammed with enough force to rattle the framed photos in the hallway. Photos of Ethan's family, I realized. There were almost none of mine. And then there was only silence and the sound of my own ragged breathing. I crumpled against my mother, the tears I'd been holding back for years finally breaking free, a flood I couldn't have stopped if I'd tried. She held me without speaking, her hand moving in slow circles on my back, the same way she had done when I was a child with a skinned knee, when the world was simpler and hurts could be kissed away. Was I stupid, Mom? I choked out, my voice muffled against her shoulder. All these years, was I just blind? Not stupid. Hopeful. There's a difference. She pulled back and looked at me, her eyes clear and unsentimental, the eyes of a woman who had weathered her own storms. You believed if you gave enough, they would eventually give back. That's not foolishness, that's faith. But some people don't operate that way. They take your hope and call it permission. It's not your fault you trusted the man you married. It's his fault he wasn't worthy of it. If I leave now, I'm 38. 10 years of my life, gone. What do I have to show for it? If you don't leave now, what will the next 10 years look like? She held my gaze. Do you think they'll suddenly start respecting you? Or will they simply learn that you'll tolerate anything? That your savings are their emergency fund? That your boundaries are suggestions? People like this don't change, Olivia. They just get more comfortable taking. Her words struck something deep and true, a chord I had been too afraid to play. I had spent a decade hoping things would change, that if I just tried a little harder, gave a little more, was a little more accommodating, I would finally be seen. But nothing had changed. It had only gotten worse, the demands escalating, the gratitude shrinking, until I was invisible in my own life. I want a divorce, I said. The words felt foreign, like speaking a language I'd studied but never used. But once they were out, a strange, weightless relief flooded through me, as if I had been holding my breath for years and had finally exhaled. Helen nodded, her expression steady. Then we'll get you one. And we'll make sure you walk away with what's yours. The next 3 days passed in a blur of spreadsheets and bank statements. My mother sat at the kitchen table of her small apartment, the apartment I would soon be moving into, with a notebook and a pen, her meticulous handwriting filling page after page. She had me pull up every transaction, every transfer, every scrap of proof I could find. It was painstaking, exhausting work, but there was something almost meditative about it, as if each line I documented was a stone I was removing from my shoulders. May 2014, $42,000 to the title company. Note, house down payment. August 2014, $70,000 to the contractor. Note, full renovation. And then, month after month, year after year, $1,400 here, $1,600 there, all funneled into the joint household account while my personal checking account languished in the double digits. Gifts for Ethan's parents, a new recliner for Frank's birthday, a pearl necklace for Margaret's anniversary, a new suit for his client dinners, plane tickets for family reunions I had organized and no one had thanked me for, a deposit on Chloe's graduation party. The list went on and on, a ledger of invisible labor. By the time I added it all up, the number was staggering. Nearly $280,000 poured into a marriage that had given me back nothing but exhaustion and a slowly eroding sense of self. I was an idiot, I said, staring at the total. The numbers blurred and swam. You were a wife who believed her husband would be a partner, Helen said, placing a cup of tea beside me. The steam curled upward, carrying the scent of chamomile. That's not idiocy. That's hope. But now you know better. Now you have the information you need. I don't even know what Ethan has. His salary, his investments, his retirement accounts, I never asked. I trusted him completely. I thought that was what love meant. Then we'll find out. The court will compel disclosure. And Jennifer, I've spoken with her, says that hiding assets during a divorce is a very serious mistake. If he tries it, it will only help your case. When Ethan came home late that night, he stopped short at the sight of my mother still at the dining table, papers spread out like evidence in a trial. His expression curdled from surprise to contempt. She's still here. He didn't address my mother directly, just spoke about her as if she were furniture. She's here as long as I need her, I said, not looking up from the spreadsheet. Olivia, how long are you going to drag this out? He yanked off his tie, his movements tight with irritation, the veins in his neck standing out. It was a house for my sister. Not a trip to Vegas. Not a secret addiction. A house. For family. Can we please move on and act like adults? Move on. I finally looked at him, and the calm in my own voice surprised me. I'm still trying to understand what happened to all the money you earned over the last decade. $850,000, give or take. Where did it go? What did it build? Because I don't see it. His face tightened, a muscle jumping in his jaw. That's none of my business. I'm your wife. Our finances are supposed to be shared. That's what you said last night, remember? What's yours is ours. So let's apply that principle evenly. Show me your accounts. Show me the investments. Let's be partners. I'm warning you, Olivia. Don't push this. I'm not pushing anything. I'm filing for divorce. The word landed like a physical blow. He stared at me, waiting for the punchline, the retraction. When it didn't come, he laughed, a short, incredulous bark that held no humor. Divorce. You're serious. Your mother's been poisoning you against me for years, and now you're letting her win. No one poisoned me. You and your family did that all on your own. Last night. This morning. Every day for the last 10 years. He stepped closer, his face inches from mine, his voice dropping to a low, menacing register that made the hair on my arm stand up. If you go through with this, you'll get nothing. Not the house, not a cent. I'll make sure of it. I know people. I have lawyers. The house I paid the down payment on. The renovation I funded. The savings you stole. We'll see what a judge thinks. And we'll see what your clients think when discovery starts. Something flickered behind his eyes. Maybe disbelief. Maybe the first stirring of real fear. He had expected tears, pleading, a capitulation. He had expected the Olivia who always backed down. He wasn't prepared for the Olivia who had nothing left to lose. You'll regret this, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. I already regret not doing it sooner. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned on his heel and walked out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled and a picture frame fell from the wall. The glass cracked, a spiderweb spreading across the smiling faces of his parents. The sound didn't scare me. It freed me. I moved out the next morning. Just one suitcase and a bag of documents, the paper trail of my life. Ethan was in the living room, arms crossed, watching me with a mixture of contempt and bewilderment. I think he still believed I was bluffing, that I would get to the door and break down, that the years of conditioning would kick in and I would apologize for making a scene. "You walk out that door," he said, "and there's no coming back. I mean it. The locks will be changed by tonight." I paused with my hand on the doorknob and looked back at him. "I know. That's the point." I wheeled my suitcase past him, opened the door, and stepped into the pale morning light. It was autumn, and the air had that crisp, clean edge that signals change. My mother was waiting downstairs in her old sedan, the engine running. She took my bag, put it in the trunk, and said nothing. She didn't have to. Her presence was enough. The law firm Jennifer Clark worked at was a glass and steel building downtown, the kind of place where the elevators played soft jazz and the receptionist offered you espresso. Jennifer was in her late 40s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for handling high-conflict divorces. The messier, the better. Her office walls were lined with framed certificates and a single piece of art, a print of a woman walking away from a burning building, calm and unbothered. I found it strangely comforting. She listened to my story without interrupting, flipping through the bank records, the screenshots of text messages, the photographs of the renovation receipts I had preserved in a shoebox for no reason I could explain. Maybe some part of me had always known I would need them. "The down payment and renovation, those are clearly your separate property," she said, tapping the records with a manicured nail. "With the paper trail you have, recouping that won't be an issue. The house itself was purchased after marriage, so it's marital property, but your contributions will be credited as separate investments. A judge will take note of the source of funds. And the $168,000 he gave his sister? Unauthorized transfer of your separate and marital funds. In my opinion, it constitutes dissipation of marital assets, using marital money for non-marital purposes without consent. That's a very strong claim. We can either demand its return to the marital estate or count it as part of his share in the final division. Frankly, a judge is not going to look kindly on a spouse who drains an account behind the other's back." For the first time in days, I felt something that wasn't despair. It was the stirring of power, the realization that I wasn't helpless. That the law, for all its flaws, had language for what had been done to me. "What about his investments?" I asked. "I don't even know what he has. We'll subpoena the records. Full financial disclosure is standard in divorce proceedings. If he tries to hide anything, it will only hurt him in the long run. And based on what you've told me about his salary and your household expenses, I suspect there's a significant amount he hasn't been transparent about." When Margaret and Frank showed up later that week with a handful of relatives, their bluster was louder than ever but somehow less frightening. They came to my mother's apartment, pounded on the door, demanded I come home and stop this nonsense. Frank shouted that I was breaking his son's heart, that I was a gold digger and a manipulator. Margaret shrieked that I would never find another man, that I was throwing away the best thing that had ever happened to me. Helen stood in the doorway like a stone wall, her arms crossed, her expression utterly unreadable. She let them shout themselves hoarse, and when they finally ran out of steam, she said, very calmly, "All further communication will go through our lawyer. If you come here again, I'll call the police. This is private property, and you are trespassing." "She'll get nothing," Frank shouted, his face purple. "Not a dime. We'll drag this out for years." Helen closed the door gently and turned to me. "They're scared. People only threaten when they're afraid. That's a good sign." The negotiation was held in a conference room at Jennifer's firm, 10 days later. Ethan arrived with his attorney, David Mitchell, a slick young man whose confidence was clearly built on billing hours rather than case law. Ethan looked thinner, shadows under his eyes, his shirt collar looser than it should have been. But his arrogance was intact, a shield he had carried for so long he didn't know how to set it down. David opened with the expected arguments, his voice smooth and practiced. The house was marital property acquired during the marriage. Ethan had paid the mortgage faithfully for 10 years. My household contributions were simply the normal duties of a spouse with no quantifiable market value. And the money given to Chloe was a family gift that I had implicitly consented to by sharing my password years ago. He used phrases like, the totality of the circumstances, and equitable distribution, as if the words themselves could reshape reality. Jennifer didn't flinch. She had been through this dance 100 times. She spread out the bank records, the wire confirmations, the forensic accounting report we had commissioned. The numbers were laid bare in black and white. Your client removed $168,000 from my client's personal account without authorization, she said, her tone conversational but her eyes sharp. That is actionable not just in divorce court but as a civil tort, conversion of funds, breach of fiduciary duty. We are prepared to pursue both. A criminal complaint is not off the table. Ethan's face went gray. The word criminal seemed to land with particular force. Furthermore, Jennifer continued, flipping to the next page. Over the course of the marriage, Mr. Walker earned approximately $850,000 in salary. His investment accounts, which he failed to disclose to his wife and which we had to subpoena, contain assets totaling over $420,000. Under the equitable distribution laws of this state, those are marital assets, accumulated during the marriage through the efforts of both parties. Those are my investments. Ethan erupted, slamming his hand on the table. She didn't contribute a cent to those. She didn't even know about them. She contributed her entire salary to the household for 10 years, enabling you to invest your income instead of spending it on living expenses, Jennifer said, unruffled. She contributed domestic labor, emotional labor, social management, and career support that freed you to pursue your professional goals. The court will recognize that contribution. It's called the marital partnership doctrine for a reason, Mr. Walker. David put a restraining hand on Ethan's arm, whispering something in his ear. Ethan shook him off, but the fight was already draining out of him, replaced by a sullen, cornered resentment. The negotiation went round after round. They offered $210,000, framing it as a generous settlement for a wife who hadn't really worked during the marriage, a line that made Jennifer's eyebrows rise almost imperceptibly. We countered at $490,000, based on a full accounting of marital assets and the unauthorized transfer. Ethan shouted, pounded the table, called me a gold digger and a manipulator. He said I had always been cold, always been calculating, that I had married him for his earning potential. I sat in my chair, my hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, and watched him unravel. This man who had once seemed so powerful, so in control, was now just a frightened boy trying to protect a hoard he had built on my invisible labor. In the end, after 2 full days of negotiation, they agreed to $350,000, paid in 2 installments, plus the equivalent value of the house given to Chloe, which would be counted as part of his share of the assets. It was less than the full amount we might have won at trial, but Jennifer advised me to take it. Trials were expensive, unpredictable, and emotionally draining. You're getting your future back, she said. That's worth more than a few extra dollars. The day the first payment landed in my account, I stood in my mother's kitchen and stared at the number on the screen. $200,000. I had never seen that much money in one place, not really, not with my name on it, not with the freedom to decide what to do with it. It felt like a door swinging open, a door I had been walking past for years without realizing it was there. How do you feel? Helen asked, slicing vegetables at the counter with the same steady hands that had held me through the worst of it. Lighter, I said, and the word felt inadequate. Like I've been carrying a backpack full of rocks for 10 years and someone finally told me I was allowed to take it off. That's because you have been. Now you can decide what you actually want to carry. And what you don't. What I wanted, I discovered, was my career. I returned to the marketing firm where I had worked dutifully but never ambitiously, always deferring to others, always leaving early to handle household responsibilities. And I found, to my quiet amazement, that the world had not ended. The office was still there, my colleagues were still friendly, and my skills I had downplayed for years, were still sharp. My boss, Daniel Brooks, called me into his office on my first day back. He was in his early 40s, with a relaxed confidence that came from being good at his job without needing to prove it. He had always been decent to me, but I had never thought of him as anything more than a manager. I heard you've been going through a rough patch, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I won't pry. But I wanted you to know that if you need flexibility, the company will work with you. I'm getting a divorce, I said, the word's easier now. But I'm ready to get back to work. More than ready. Good. Because there's a major project with Vance Properties, and I want you to lead it. I blinked. Me? I haven't led a project that size before. You've got the experience. You just never put yourself forward. I've seen your work, Olivia. You're thorough, you're creative, and you handle pressure well. The team needs someone like you. He paused, and something in his expression softened. I also think you need something that's yours. Something you can point to and say, I did that. The project was complex and demanding, a 6-month integrated campaign for a regional real estate developer. I threw myself into it the way I had once thrown myself into my marriage, completely, unreservedly, with the belief that effort would be rewarded. Only this time, it was. I stayed late at the office because I wanted to, not because I was avoiding an empty house. I led brainstorming sessions, flew to client meetings in other cities, made decisions that carried real weight and real consequences. I discovered that I was good at this, that I had always been good at this, and had simply put it aside because I thought my marriage needed me to be smaller. Catherine Vance, the sharp-eyed CEO of Vance Properties, was a woman in her late 50s who had built her company from nothing. She reminded me of my mother in some ways, the same directness, the same refusal to be intimidated. After one particularly difficult presentation, she pulled me aside. You're good, Olivia, she said, her handshake firm. You don't try to dazzle with jargon. You just solve problems. I like that. I'm glad Daniel put you on this, though I suspect he had selfish reasons. I didn't know what she meant by that, and I didn't ask. But later, I would remember the comment and wonder if she had seen something I was still blind to. One evening, after a long strategy session that had run well past dinner, Daniel offered me a ride home. The office was mostly empty, the cleaning crew already making their rounds. We sat in his car, the city lights sliding past in streaks of gold and red, and he asked, "How are you holding up?" Really? Honestly? I leaned my head against the cool window. Better than I've been in years. Which feels strange to say, because my marriage just ended. I should be devastated, shouldn't I? I should be crying into pints of ice cream and wondering what I did wrong. Should is a dangerous word. How you feel is how you feel. I feel free. Is that terrible? It doesn't sound terrible. It sounds like you were in a situation that was slowly crushing you, and you got out. People mourn good relationships. They celebrate escaping bad ones. I turned to look at him. There was something in his voice, not pity, but recognition. As if he understood what it meant to shrink yourself for someone else, to make yourself less so someone else could feel like more. The streetlights caught the edge of his profile, and I noticed for the first time that he had kind eyes. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything. Why did you give me that project?" "The real reason." He was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the wheel. "Because I saw you, Olivia. For 3 years, I watched you do excellent work and then defer the credit to someone else. I watched you leave early to handle things at home, and I watched you come in the next morning looking exhausted. I knew something wasn't right, but it wasn't my place to say anything. When I heard you'd filed for divorce, I thought, here's someone who finally decided she deserved better. And I wanted to be part of making sure she got it. I didn't know what to say. I had been invisible for so long that being seen felt almost painful, like stepping into sunlight after years in a dark room. The months that followed were a slow, careful rebuilding. The final settlement payment arrived, and with it, a sense of closure I hadn't expected. I rented my own apartment, smaller than the house I'd shared with Ethan, but every piece of furniture, every color on the walls, every book on the shelves was mine. I adopted a cat from the shelter, a gray tabby with one ear slightly crooked, and named her Chance. My mother came over for dinner every Sunday, and we would sit on the balcony and watch the sunset and talk about nothing in particular, which was its own kind of healing. Ethan's life, I heard through the grapevine, had not fared as well. The investment fund he had been so desperate to protect, the one that was supposed to be his great success, took a bad turn in a market downturn and lost nearly half its value. Chloe's fiancé, pressured by his family and rattled by the divorce drama, broke off the engagement. Apparently the house on Maplewood wasn't in a desirable enough school district, and the taint of the family conflict made the Walkers seem unstable. The house sat empty for months, an albatross no one wanted, until Ethan was forced to sell it at a loss. He called me once, late at night, his voice raw and unfamiliar. "Olivia, I know I messed up. I didn't realize everything you did. I didn't see it until you were gone. The house is a mess. I can't find anything. My mom keeps asking me to do things you used to handle. Can we talk? Please. Just coffee. Just to talk." I listened to the silence on the line after he stopped speaking. Once, that silence would have been filled with my own guilt, my own desperate need to fix things, to soothe his feelings, to make everything okay. Now it was just quiet. I didn't owe him my peace. "I'm sorry things are hard for you, Ethan," I said, and I meant it, not because I wished him well, but because I was sorry that he had been raised to believe that people were things to be used. But I'm not the person who makes them better anymore. I never really was. You just convinced me I was. Goodbye. I hung up before he could respond. Then I blocked his number, his mother's number, Chloe's number, every tendril of the family that had once wrapped around my life. I stood in my living room, the cat winding around my ankles, and I realized I was smiling. Daniel and I took things slowly. He was careful, respectful of the fact that I was still healing, still learning how to trust my own judgment. He didn't push. He just showed up, for coffee, for walks, for conversations that stretched late into the evening. A year after my divorce was finalized, he asked me to dinner at the same restaurant where we had celebrated the Vance project, and over dessert, he told me he loved me. "You don't have to say it back," he added quickly, his usual confidence replaced by a vulnerability I had never seen. "I just needed you to know. You deserve to know that someone sees you. The real you. And the real you is remarkable." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I love you too. I think I have for a while. I was just scared to admit it." Scared of what? That I was making the same mistake. That I was giving away too much again. But you're not asking me to give anything away. You're just asking me to be here. That's different. That's new. He smiled, and the tension in his shoulders released. I'm not Ethan. I don't want you to be smaller. I want you to be exactly as large as you are. My mother came over for dinner that weekend. She sat in my kitchen, with the plants on the windowsill and the cat curled on the chair and the soft, warm light I had chosen myself, and watched me move around the stove. Daniel was setting the table, and the two of them were discussing a book they had both read, their voices easy and companionable. You look happy, my mother said later, when Daniel had stepped out to get more wine. I am. I didn't know it was possible to feel this light. To wake up in the morning and not dread the day. That's what happens when you stop carrying people who only weigh you down. She took a sip of her tea, her eyes crinkling at the corners. I'm proud of you, Olivia. Not for leaving, anyone can leave. I'm proud of you for staying gone. For building something new. That's the hard part. I set down the spoon and went to hug her, wrapping my arms around her thin shoulders. Thank you, Mom. For everything. For that day. For saying what I couldn't. For standing in that doorway and not backing down. I didn't say anything you didn't already know. You just needed permission to believe it. Sometimes that's all any of us need. Someone to tell us we're not crazy for wanting to be treated like a human being. She was right. I had known for years that something was broken. I had felt the cracks spreading, the foundation crumbling, and I had spent all my energy trying to patch them instead of asking whether the structure was worth saving. But standing in my own kitchen, with a career I loved, a man who saw me as a partner rather than a resource, a mother who had always been my anchor, and a bank account that belonged only to me, I realized that the end of my marriage had not been a failure. It had been the first true decision I'd made for myself in a decade. It had been a rescue mission, and I had been both the victim and the rescuer. And my mother, with her quiet, unwavering clarity, had handed me the key. If you can't go on, then end it. 7 words, spoken into a room full of people who thought I would never have the courage to listen. A whole new life, waiting on the other side of a door I had been too afraid to open. I still have the bank alert from that night. Not because I need to remember the pain, but because I want to remember the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped being a character in someone else's story and started writing my own. My mother knew best. She always did.